Welcome to the Unpacking It Live podcast presented by Medi-Share. I'm Bryce Johnson. For the next hour, we will unpack sports, faith, and life with you in the Unpacking It community of sports fans. Thanks to everybody listening and watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. All the podcast listeners later on, hello to you as well. We are live. You can jump on the chat. Would love to hear what you're convinced of from the week in sports. And as we head toward the rest of the summer, what are you convinced of right now as we head into NBA free agency? Wow, a lot of intrigue there coming off the NBA draft. And so we will discuss a lot of that today on the show. What did you think of the draft? And what do you think of some of these names being thrown around in trade conversations and free agency conversations? It should be just another fascinating summer in the NBA. And I almost love this time of year in the NBA as much as any other time. I mean, the finals were great this year, but I love I guess baseball calls it the hot stove league, but it's kind of that way in the NBA right around 4th of July. Always a lot of fun. So would love to know your thoughts on that. I've been getting a lot of texts about the NBA lately, even more so than during the playoffs. So that makes it fun. Today on the show, we will do Unpack This about the Detroit Lions avoiding floaters. That's right. Let that soak in. And so we're going to talk about that from a spiritual standpoint and how we can avoid being floaters in our own lives and what it means to drift and what it means to just go through the motions. And so I think it'll be an encouraging conversation for all of us today. And then also we've got some great questions for Tap Drill today. Henry is back. We're going to say hello to him in just a moment. But Luke is still on his cruise. He gets back this week, but we missed him the last couple of weeks, and so he'll be back and ready to go here soon. But looking forward to catching up with him. Both of our interns are here today. One is here in the studio. We'll hear from Landon in just a bit. We also have another intern, CJ, who's working behind the scenes. So that's our team. Chris is our producer. He helps on the editing side after the show as well. So thanks everybody that's involved with Unpacking It. I do want to thank our presenting sponsor, Medi-Share. If you're looking for an affordable, reliable healthcare option that you can trust, check out Medi-Share.com/unpackingit. Medi-Share offers programs for every budget, and so they'll customize it to fit you and your family. And so the best part is their members, on average, save 50% or more on their healthcare costs. And so you can go to Medi-Share.com/unpackingit. And if nothing else, check out that website today. There's a picture of my family. So we've now updated that website, and it's a picture of my two beautiful girls and my beautiful wife. So, yeah, you're stuck seeing me too, but go see the beautiful women in my life on Medi-Share.com/unpackingit. And then while you're there, figure out if, hey, maybe Medi-Share is an option for you and your family. And so my family, we've been members for over 6 years and encourage you to check it out. All right. So a couple other things to mention before we really dive in. And I'm going to let you know what I'm convinced of in regards to fathers and sons in sports. And so we'll do that in a moment. But I did want to say this. In July, we're actually going to take some time off from the live show. So we'll still have other podcasts going out, but July, a little bit slower on the sports front. And so I'm going to take some time as well to get refueled, spend some time with the Lord, spend some time with my family. So I'll be, energetic and excited, hopefully, when I return, and we'll bring some of that energy to this live show once again. But in the meantime, don't be alarmed. We'll be back, but we will take a couple weeks off. And then, of course, the 4th of July week, we're off as well. So we'll see you later on in July, and we'll keep you posted on that. But let's jump into I'm convinced, and then after that, we'll say hello to Henry, and he was at the Travelers Championship, and we want to hear about his time there. The golf tournament over the weekend, Xander Schauffele got the win. And so we'll hear what the experience was like for Henry. Because just a few weeks ago, Luke was at the golf tournament. So everybody's got golf tournaments in their hometown. Mine is coming to Charlotte, the President's Cup in, I guess, September. So that should be fun. All right, so here's what I'm convinced of today. I'm convinced it's better to be a son of a good or average professional athlete versus being a son of a great athlete, because you have a stronger chance to have a more successful playing career if that's the case. Because let's go through some of the names in today's game, but then also older players that have already finished their careers. So here are some guys who proved that it was great that they had a dad that was, pretty good at sports, followed in his footsteps, but ultimately exceeded the career that their dad had. How about Kobe Bryant? So his dad, Joe Jellybean Bryant, decent career, played in the NBA, played overseas. Steph Curry, who we've been celebrating. Del Curry was an awesome Charlotte Hornet, good three-point shooter. Steph took what his dad did, and then now he's the greatest three-point shooter of all time. Klay Thompson, same type of thing. His dad, Michael, averaged over 13 points a game, was pretty good. He won 2 championships with the Lakers, but Klay Thompson has doubled that. And so very impressive. Andrew Wiggins, his dad, Mitchell, played in the NBA a little bit, but Andrew Wiggins is already better than him. Al Horford, his dad, Tito, just a little bit in the NBA. And then you get to other sports. Ken Griffey Jr., his dad played. Ken Griffey Jr. was better. How about Patrick Mahomes? We're even taking a different sport. So Patrick Mahomes, which I think is maybe even a better decision, but Patrick Mahomes, his dad, Pat, was a kind of an average baseball pitcher. And now Patrick Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and a Super Bowl winner. So those are guys who proved this concept that it's better to have a good or average professional athlete versus having a great, dad who was an awesome athlete. And so here are some new players in the NBA right now that I believe have a chance to also prove this theory correct moving forward. Coming out of the NBA draft, I am convinced that Jabari Smith Jr. will be way better than his dad, Jabari Smith Sr., and I'm also convinced that Jabari Smith Jr. will be the best player from this draft. At the moment, that's how I feel. I think Jaden Ivey will be close, but I think Jabari Smith Jr. Is going to have a tremendous career. In watching some of his interviews and just knowing how talented he is, what he did at Auburn, he's got all the skills, all the intangibles and the physical qualities to be a really good NBA player. And his dad, kind of a journeyman guy, short career, and he was able to learn from his dad, but now be even better. All right, what about AJ Griffin, who went to the Atlanta Hawks? Of course, former Dookie. His dad, Adrian Griffin, decent player. I remember him when he was playing, but AJ's going to be way better than his dad, and it's going to benefit him in a big way. Jalen Brunson, who's looking to get big money, maybe goes to Henry's Knicks in the offseason or stays with Luke's Dallas Mavs. But his dad, Rick Brunson, end of the bench type of player, and Jalen Brunson is becoming a star. And then Sabonis in Sacramento compared to his dad, Arvydas. He's not my Vetus. He's not your Vetus. He's our Vetus. But he's a former player. Henry liked that joke. But I think it was Dan Patrick that used to do that. Somebody on SportsCenter used to do that. But anyway, Domantas Sabonis is going to be he already is, a really good NBA player. Throw in Jaren Jackson Jr. and throw in Cole Anthony, whose dad, Greg, was a little bit better than average. Decent NBA career. So all those guys, I'm in. I'm following them. I'm watching them. Because their dads were mediocre, I think they have a chance to be really good to great in the NBA. However, let's now look at some of the dads who were unbelievable dads. Not necessarily, I don't know what kind of dads they were, but they were great NBA players. Their sons tried to also follow in the footsteps, but they'll never be as good as their dad, or they never were as good as their dad. So how about Michael Jordan's kids? You feel bad for them. They played in college. That was it. LeBron's kids, will they be able to do it? A lot of pressure. I'm not so sure. How about Patrick Ewing's son, John Stockton, Bill Walton and Luke, Shaq's kids. He's got his one son who just signed in the summer league with the Lakers. We'll see. It's going to be a long road. Didn't really work out in college. Some injuries though, health issues. We'll see what his son Sharif can do in the NBA summer league. And then Scottie Pippen, same thing. He's going to the Lakers summer league, but I think it's going to be really tough because Scottie Pippen is an all-time great, the dad. And then throw in Gary Payton, the second. He was okay with the Warriors, but I don't think he'll ever be as good as his dad was with the Sonics. And let's see, he played for who did he play for? He was great with the Sonics. He bounced around. He finished his career with the Lakers. But so there you go. That's what I'm convinced of. Would love to know your thoughts on that. Who are some other players that come to mind? And do you buy into this idea that, you wanted to have a dad that played in the NBA, but you just want him to be average. You don't want him to be one of the greats, the all-time greats. It's too hard to be that son. It really is. And now that gets us to another big story from the week. Arch Manning deciding to go to Texas. He made his big recruiting decision, and his dad is Cooper Manning. So he has the Manning name. He gets the benefits of his uncles, but he doesn't have to quite deal with the pressure of his dad. And unfortunately for Cooper, it was injury related. I think Cooper's still probably my favorite Manning brother. He's definitely the funniest. The other two are also funny, and I love the whole family. But I think Arch has a good chance because as Cooper's son versus Peyton or Eli's kids, I'm not so sure that those guys, I don't even know how many sons they have combined, but I'll put my stock in Arch as he begins his career in Texas. And he might not play for a couple of years anyway. He'll have to earn his way at Texas. But they're building something there. I think that's a huge win for them to get back into relevancy. So that was, of course, a very intriguing story because I was wondering where he was going to end up. And the fact that he decided, Tennessee, Peyton, no thanks. Ole Miss, Eli, I'm good. I'm going to go Texas, pave my own trail a little bit. So there you go. Those some family relations and connections there. Always fun to take a look at. All right, let's say hello to Henry Bieneme, who we'll hear more from during Tap Drill. But Henry would love to hear about the Travelers Championship this week up in Connecticut. How'd it go for you? And what did you think of Xander Schauffele getting the win?
With you guys, the Travelers Championship in Cromwell, Connecticut, located on TPC River Highland, was a great experience. It's always a great experience in Connecticut. As a matter of fact, it is the event in Connecticut. It's like our Super Bowl. Everybody comes out. Everybody comes out for not just to watch the golfers, but just the experience all itself. And this is actually the first time since COVID that we've actually had an unlimited fan attendance. Last year they kind of had to put a capper on it. The year before they didn't have any fans on there. So it was quite an experience to see the golfers go through and there's no fans cheering. So now this year was the first year that they had an unlimited fan attendance. And let me tell you, we were there, the radio station for iHeartRadio, the iHeartRadio affiliate that I work for. We were there for the entire week from Monday through Sunday. And I was there for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And even then, you could see all of the staff, the volunteers, even some of the golfers come by. And I love to see the golfers come by early. They get to survey the field. They get to survey the tees. They get to walk around, kind of get lost in the situation. And you see that this to them, some of these guys are coming off of a U.S. Open and they want to build on that momentum, and other guys want to put the U.S. Open behind them, especially if they didn't make the cut at the U.S. Open, because the Travelers Championship is right off of the heels of the U.S. Open. And to your point with Xander Schauffele is kind of like, and we'll talk about this and unpack this for a little bit, is like he was kind of steady. You wouldn't know it, but once he got the lead, he was just that steady influence. Whereas you had guys like Rory McIlroy, who started off hot and then just fell off the face of the earth, if you want to stay and call it in the top 25, falling off the face of the earth. He was right there with Schauffele in the beginning, and then he fell off. He double bogeyed 15, and his shot went left and right, kind of like the drifting that you're talking about, that you're going to talk about it, unpack this. It went left, it went right, it went in the bunkers. And then Patrick Cantlay, who was about 6 or 7 shots off the lead on Friday, on Saturday goes and hits a -7 and is 1 shot behind Schauffele going into Sunday, and then he falls off. And then we have an unknown guy named Thigala who's making his charge, and you see Xander Schauffele. Everybody's like, oh my God, he's coming for Xander. He's coming for Xander, but Xander's cool. He makes his putts, and he just kind of coasts right into the championship. So it was always a fun time at the Travelers. If you're in the Connecticut area, I always recommend that you take in the Travelers. It's a fun time. Everybody's invited. The kids love it. The fan zones, everything. It's a great time.
Man, that's awesome. Love hearing that. And it's funny. So you say Schauffele, I say Schauffele. I wonder what the answer is on that. You're more on the souffle.
Yes.
The souffle side of it, the bien-aimé. I'm saying Xander Schauffele. I don't know which way we come out on that. Landon, can you be the tiebreaker on that?
Xander Shuffle.
like the Cupid shuffle.
Yeah, we're a mess. We're a mess.
There you go.
So congrats to Xander. Congrats to Xander.
Yes.
Actually, I have a good friend from growing up. We called him Zan. So shout out to Zan today. All right. Well, there you go. So let's jump into unpack this and want to actually talk about the Detroit Lions. So before you turn the channel, before you scroll through social media, stick with us. I think it'll be encouraging to all of us. And here's the deal this year. The Detroit Lions are going to be on Hard Knocks. So we're going to be hearing a lot about the Lions, and all of us are at least familiar with the Lions because we watch them on Thanksgiving every year. I actually root for them. I want the Lions to be good. But the reality is they are a losing franchise. They have loyal fans, but they just haven't been able to figure things out. They haven't been able to get over the hump and have any type of sustained success. They've tried lots of different coaches. They've had, Matthew Stafford, who's a good number 1 pick at quarterback, ultimately just couldn't get them over the hump. And we saw what he did with the Rams. However, they have a new head coach in Dan Campbell. And I don't necessarily love everything that he says, but I like his passion. I like that he's a former player. I like the toughness that he's bringing to the Lions, and he's trying to change the culture. He's trying to build a program there and build a franchise and change the mentality and the aura surrounding the Lions. And part of that is you got to bring in the right types of guys that are going to fit his style, his personality, his philosophy, and those are the types of guys that he's going after. And so they had a good draft. They drafted Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan, so they're excited about him. And when you look at their roster, Jared Goff at least went to the Super Bowl with the Rams, so he's capable of it. But you bring him back, and now you surround him with DJ Chark. They bring him in. DeAndre Swift as a running back, I really like. And so they've had just kind of a number of kind of roster moves in the last couple of years in draft picks. Amon-Ra St. Brown, great receiver last year, really came on midway through the season. And so anyway, they're adding all these different players. And Campbell said this in a press conference this offseason in explaining the type of players that they're going after. He says, we are trying to avoid floaters. We don't want to draft floaters. Floaters are a guy who gets here and just kind of, there he goes. He's just in the open ocean. We want guys that are highly competitive and they love ball. They're not going to be perfect. They might not always say the right things. They mean well, but they love ball. They'll do anything for it and do anything for their teammates. In that regard, I'm elated with the guys we have and the vision. And so we understand this as fans, that there is a difference between NFL players who just, go through the motions. They do the bare minimum. They're just kind of floating around. They show up, but they're they're not as engaged, they're not as passionate, they're not as excited about being there. And then the players who really love the game, the ones that are willing to make sacrifices. Tom Brady comes to mind. They love competing, they love winning, and they get on board with what their head coach asks them to do. And so they buy in. They're all in. They're passionate about what football is and what they need to do as professional athletes, and so they're willing to do whatever it takes. So how this parallels to us is in life, it's also true that there's a difference between someone who truly loves God, obeys his commands, makes sacrifices, and is willing to do anything for God versus a floater. Someone who drifts through life, going through the motion, and even likes the idea of being a quote unquote Christian, but whose heart fully isn't devoted, is not fully devoted to God. They don't truly love God. And so in First John, I'm going to read a couple different verses here. First John tells us loving God means keeping his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. So if we love God, we love to do what he says. We want to obey him. We want to follow him. It's not burdensome. It's out of a place of love and appreciation for who God is. And so commandments, compared to like for a football player, practice, working hard, doing what's necessary. Yeah, no problem. I love it. I love God. I love doing what he wants me to do. In Hebrews, it warns us. So we must listen very carefully to the truth we have heard, or we may drift away from it. And so if we're just casually listening to the word or casually reading the word and not really letting it sink into who we are and not really, loving God, loving his word, then it's very likely we'll become drifters or floaters and just drift from the truth, drift from the path, the life that God has for us. In James, it gives us this challenge. But don't just listen to God's word. You must do what it says. Otherwise, you're only fooling yourselves. There are a lot of NFL players just fooling themselves, just going through the motions, trying, I'll show up to practice, but they don't put in the work, and then they find themselves out of the league in 3 years. And so we wonder the difference. Talent, sure, a lot of talented players in the NFL, but it's the ones that really love the game and that love doing whatever's necessary. And then in First John, it also says, whoever says, I know him, talking about God, but does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, in him truly the love of God is perfected. By this we may know that we are in him. Whoever says he abides in him ought to walk in the same way in which he walked. And so it's not about being perfect. It's about loving God and remaining committed to him. And so going back to Campbell's words about football players, it can actually, we'll replace a couple of the words and let this be, an encouragement to us as followers of Jesus. Here's what Campbell said. They're not going to be perfect. They might not always say the right things. They mean well, but they love not ball, but God. They'll do anything for anything for him, and do anything for their teammates. And so Campbell's talking about from a football perspective, but the same thing is true for us that we're not going to be perfect. We're not always going to say the right thing. We're not going to do the right thing. But if we love him and love our teammates, love people, then, it comes from, we'll be able to do that because out of the love that God has shown us and the love that we want to respond with for him and for others. And so today, the encouragement for all of us is let's not be floaters who drift from God or just go through the motions doing, quote unquote Christian things that we're doing it on the surface without our hearts being into it. Instead, let's genuinely be passionate about our God who first loved us and love him in a way that Jesus tells us in Matthew, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That's what we're called to. That's the standard. That's what love is. It's with all of us, all of who we are. And so, at that point, when we really love him in that way, we won't find practice or the workouts burdensome because of our love for him and our holy competitiveness. I kind of came up with that today. I'm sure someone else has used that before, but just kind of this idea of holy competitiveness that, Coach Campbell's looking for players who love football and are competitive. And for us, that holy competitiveness is that desire to love God with all we've got, and then to go for God with all we've got, to be competitive, to witness to people and to love people well, and to show people who Jesus is and to love them the way that Jesus loves us. It's this kind of this competitiveness that drives us. And then we can be effective and obedient and joyful followers of Jesus who experience eternal victories. And so we're competitive for eternal victories and excellence, eternal excellence, and that holy competitiveness. So I may have to do a whole Devo on that concept, but anyway, this whole idea of love, it's loving God. That's what drives us to obey. And so we have to take a look at our own lives and examine, am I just floating? Am I just going through the motions? Am I just a casual Christian? Or am I, all in? And I love God so much that I want to be fully surrendered. I want to go where he wants me to go. I want to do what he wants me to do, no matter the cost, no matter what's required or asked of me. I'm in. And we can't just do that in our own strength, and we can't just muster up enough. It's got to come from a deep understanding of who God is, how much he loves us, and then in response, it'll be this love for him. So you're telling me the God of the universe sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for me so that I can be forgiven, so that I can live forever. Yeah, I love God. I love that he would do that for me. I love him for who he is. He's perfect and righteous and wonderful and holy and faithful and good and great and all those wonderful characteristics that we could talk about all day. That's the God we love. That's the God we're invited to know. And so let's live a life of loving him, which then allows us to obey him and follow him everywhere he wants us to go. So there you go. That's our Unpack This topic today. If you have any thoughts on the Detroit Lions, you could also chime in with that as well. And Henry, if there's anything you'd like to throw in there and add, feel free to jump in.
I was in the background. I'm about ready to go ahead and pass the collection plate. You preaching right about now. Go ahead, Bryce.
Amen.
Yeah,
Well, thanks,
there's a lot. Actually, there is definitely a lot more meat on that bone to cover. I love what you talked about when you talked about Coach Campbell's words. It says it's not about being perfect. It's not about loving God and remaining committed to him. That's why we love the Bible so much, because in the Bible it talks about the Pharisee who says, look at me, I did this. Look at me, I did this. Look at me, I'm not like that guy. And then you have the tax collector who says, I know I'm a sinner, but still I just want God's love. I know I did wrong. And then there's another verse in the Bible that says that God didn't come for the righteous, because if they were righteous, then they wouldn't need God. Sick people don't need to go. Sick people need to go to the hospital, not people who are well. And about floaters, it also talks about going to and fro with the wind. You have to, don't we always talk about, you have like two types of athletes. You got the athlete who seems entitled. Well, I'm only here. You need me. I don't need you. You're only good because I'm here. And then you got the other athlete who knows who's not going to be the all pro, who's not going to be the all NBA, who's not going to make the first team. But you know what? He's going to show up each and every day, and he's going to give his hardest. He's going to give his best, because not for himself, but for the value of the team. And that same way, and you even mentioned it, that same way, God says the first commandment is to love him with everything that we have and not leave anything behind. And you even mentioned Christians. We were just talking about this in church, that we don't like lukewarm Christians. The same way in the Bible, The Bible says that if you're lukewarm, you'll be spat out. You're either hot or you're cold. You're either one way or the other, but just don't go through acting like a Christian and just going through the motions. The Bible says that if I can give the shirt off of my back, but if there's no love behind it, my actions don't mean anything. I could be the best singer in the world, but if there's no love behind it, I'm just a noisy voice. So you were definitely on it today, Bryce.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Henry. I appreciate that. And man, yeah, the idea of lukewarm, I could have kind of gone in that direction with this topic as well. And that verse is really talking about when water is hot, it can be, a lot of value to hot water. I just had my morning coffee. You want hot water for that. But then also water can be great when it's cold. It's refreshing. And I jumped in the pool yesterday, refreshing water. So you got to be hot or cold. But that lukewarm water, what are you doing with lukewarm water? You can't do anything with lukewarm. Hot and cold, you're good to go. So we want to be hot and passionate for the Lord, and cold and refreshing, and helping people experience the refreshment of God as well. So that's a good word from Henry. So I appreciate that. All right, so we'd love to know your thoughts. You can leave your comments anywhere you're watching right now. Henry's keeping an eye on the chat as well. We'll do Tap Drill with him in just a little bit. But let's get to some of the other big sports stories today. And earlier today, the one guy who is not my favorite athlete, but he finds himself getting in the news more and more, it's Kyrie Irving. And last week on the show, if you listened, I sort of joked around just saying, he might as well just retire or go play in the Big Three, which I was watching a little Big Three last night, Ice Cube's league. Man, it's the dark days of the summer now, isn't it? But I also watched a little of the A-Rod game last night, which we'll talk about during the Medi-Share moment. Which I like that Michael K, Alex Rodriguez broadcast. It's pretty good on Sunday Night Baseball. But anyway, the Kyrie Irving story is intriguing to me because I'm fascinated that he still thinks he has a lot of value in the NBA. But initially, very few teams are actually interested in going to get Kyrie Irving. For one, he may not be interested in playing for many teams, but it looks like him and the Nets are moving on. They're open to him, looking for a sign and trade situation. And apparently, when you get into the salary cap logistics of all this, it looks like he actually has to pick up his player option. There's like $36 million, and then potentially get traded. And that's the only way he could end up on a team like the Lakers, because the Lakers don't have enough cap room to make it all work the way if he didn't pick up his player option and then tried to re-sign and then get traded, it makes it more complicated. So it's all very complicated in moving Kyrie. But if they don't want to be together, they'll figure out a way to get him out of town, and he's going to find himself somewhere else. I do think the Knicks are a possibility. It seems like the Miami Heat are going to end up with somebody because they have so many assets, but I don't think they have a championship team. So I still think the Heat are one kind of star player short. But when you look at their bench and how they won this year, they made a great run and lost to Boston. So now all of a sudden they can move Tyler Hero and you'd hate to move Bam, but maybe you go get Kevin Durant, because if Kyrie's gone, is Durant going to stay? Because who are they going to get? And then the Portland Trailblazers, Damian Lillard, he'd love to get Kevin Durant, but the Blazers don't have enough to trade and get him. And so, where does Durant end up? Where does Kyrie end up? The next couple of weeks are going to be absolutely fascinating. And everybody's trying to catch up with the Warriors, because all indications are the Warriors are going to bring their players back. They'll go way over the luxury cap, luxury tax, they're way over the salary cap, and they're going to keep their core in place. And so to me, they're still the team. And then you got the Bucks, who, to me, nobody's better than Giannis. Giannis is still as dominant as anybody. Steph, maybe. Both of those guys are kind of equal in different ways. And so the Bucks are going to be back in the mix. So everybody else is now trying to maneuver. And then the Celtics, of course, who were in the Eastern Conference or represent the East in the finals, they're only going to get better, but they're going to have to make some tweaks. They probably don't really buy into Marcus Smart as their long-term starting point guard. So they may, but they're not bringing Kyrie back. So I don't know what other star point guards are even available. So they're going to have to try to make some smaller moves to beef up their roster a little bit to stay in the mix. And then of course the LA Lakers, who I root for, but I don't root for Kyrie. So I see how him and LeBron have won before. So part of me goes, all right, maybe they can win together. LeBron's about the only guy that can get the most out of him. But do I really want to watch that? I don't think so. I probably don't. I'd rather Kyrie go to the Knicks. Sorry, Henry. I'd rather him just go there. Just, he can be the star. Just let him go there. Do you want him, Henry? Do you want Kyrie?
Oh God, no! Are you kidding me? We have enough to deal with, and I should have apologized to you guys. We had to send your boy Kemba away
That's right.
in that massive thing called the NBA draft on Thursday night. Oh my God. I stopped watching because my head was so dizzy from all the trades, not just with the Knicks, but with all of the trades that were going on throughout the entire draft.
Yeah.
But to your particular point, no, we don't want Kyrie Irving there. Let's not get it twisted. Kyrie Irving is an all NBA talent. There's no denying that. I mean, when he's on the court, there are very few guys that can keep up with the level of talent that he has. His problem is that, just like you talked about earlier in Unpack This, does he love the game of basketball, or
That's right.
does his outside interest control the way he feels?
Yes.
You're talking about he in the 3 years that he's been, and we're not even going to talk about Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant, the first year he was injured, so we're not really talking about him. But Kyrie Irving hasn't been available for the Brooklyn Nets. And we're not talking about the injury portion of it, the bubble. We're talking about not getting the vaccine mandate. However you feel about that one way or the other, he wasn't there. And then there are times where he just decided that he wanted to take off for a couple of weeks, didn't tell his team, didn't tell his coach, didn't tell his management. That's just too much drama in New York City, where you're already under a microscope in Madison Square Garden.
You guys would love to have a star again. You're begging for a star. So
yeah, but not him though.
I know. No, I
Not
feel that way with
Kyrie.
the Lakers. It's go get somebody, just not Kyrie. So then where does he end up? I mean, does he go? I seriously, if it's not the Lakers, the Knicks, I mean, maybe the Clippers. They've got some other pieces, but they'd have to give up the rest of their bench because they're not trading Paul George or Kawhi for him.
Oh God,
So
no.
So it's going to be very, very interesting. And that's like I said at the top of the show. This time of year, I love the possibilities. I love playing with the trade machine on ESPN. I like to guess where these guys are going to go. It's going to be cool. So going back, though, a little bit to the NBA draft, I thought this year's draft, the players, this was a deep draft. I found myself, seeing a lot of the guys from March Madness, which some years it ends up being maybe a lot of European players or guys from the G League. We had a couple from the G League this year. But more so like in the top 10, I'm like, wait, who are these guys? Where are they coming from? Whereas this year, all right, yeah, Keegan Murray. Yeah, no, I remember him and Jaden Ivey. Yeah, these guys are good players. These guys are contributors. These guys will come in pretty quickly and play well in the NBA and make these teams better. So I thought it was a wonderful kind of crop of players. It makes me excited about this year's NBA season. But I will say the coverage was not great. The broadcasting coverage of the draft left a lot to be desired. And part of that, Henry, the confusion too, where you're wondering, wait, what are the trades going on? I mean, I kept looking for a screen to pop up to explain what the trades were, and it just seemed to never happen. I mean, it was like, what are we doing here? It's like they threw the draft together. Landon, did you find this to be the case as well?
I did, but did anyone see Stephen A. Smith sit on the podcast silent for 20 minutes after the Knicks didn't pick a single player?
So that's another interesting topic where you have a broadcaster who's an open fan of a team, which normally I'm okay with. but I would say that I want guys to be honest with who they root for, and I understand, media members are biased toward their favorite teams. I'm okay with that because I am. I'll tell you about the Hornets and Panthers, and I'm viewing it as a passionate fan. But when you're covering the NBA draft and you act like a child and you're paid $10 million, I mean, come on, man. That was over the top. And I know I like Stephen A, but that was over the top, and it represented the frustration for Knicks fans. I get that, but we're tuning in to get some coverage of the draft. I had both channels on, ESPN and ABC, and I'm looking for some good coverage. I like Jay Billis. Kendrick Perkins was okay. But it was Adrian Wojnarowski. He's too worried about his phone and tweeting out the picks. I don't care about Twitter. I'm watching the draft. Give me insight on the draft while I'm watching it on television. Like, what are we doing? So that was the frustrating part for me.
Yeah, Bryce, I don't even think half the people on the coverage set knew where the players were going to when they were traded. It was so frustrating.
Now, there was just a lack of information and clarity, because on one channel, we've got the guy crying. On the other channel, we got, Adrian Wojnarowski looking at his 5 different phones trying to figure out, wait, this phone tells me the Pistons are in the trade. This phone tells me the Giants or the Knicks are in the trade. So I was very confused. One of them said the Giants were in. I mean, it was so confusing. We thought that Odell Beckham was coming back to the Giants. It was just insanity. So anyway, it was just a wild draft. But I do think, I'll say this as a Hornets fan, and a Duke fan, the Mark Williams signing was fantastic. So I was absolutely thrilled about that. If you guys remember, throughout the March Madness run, I was very high on Mark Williams. He was my guy. He's the player from this year's Duke team that I was most excited about as a Duke player, and even now as an NBA player. And the fact that he's coming to my hometown team, I'm thrilled about. So that was one of my favorite picks, of course. And then, Duke had multiple picks in the first round, which is a big deal. One other story to touch on that also involves the Charlotte Hornets, but this is a bigger topic for, just sports in general. The Hornets brought back the coach that it was funny because on last week's show, I joked that the Hornets should bring back James Borrego, who they just fired. And I wasn't that far off. They brought back Steve Clifford, who they fired before James Borrego. And so now Steve Clifford is coaching the Charlotte Hornets again. Nobody else wanted the job. So they had to go look around and say, hey, will anyone take it? Will anyone take it? It's kind of with Kyrie. Hey, will anyone take Kyrie? Will anyone take Kyrie? Oh, a Division III school might take Kyrie back. He's still got some eligibility left, doesn't he? So the Big Three's looking for it. They got to add some talent. But anyway, the Hornets get Steve Clifford. And so I was curious, and CJ, our intern, looked up other coaches that have returned to the team that they once coached. Now, of course, successfully, Phil Jackson, he returned to the Lakers. So they had a little issue with him and Kobe, but they mended fences, and then they were able to win some. They won 2 championships together once he came back. Mike Brown with the Cleveland Cavaliers was fired in 2010, rehired in 2013. But then he was fired again in 2014. So that didn't work out too well. John Gruden, we of course know he was with the Raiders, then went to the ESPN booth. Or no, he was with the Bucks before that. Then the booth, and then the Raiders. And so let's see, no, Raiders, Bucks, booth, then the Raiders again. And now we don't know where John Gruden is. Has anybody heard from John Gruden? So kind of a sad end to his football career, it seems. But the Raiders did go back to the well to get him. And then I know we've got a lot of UNC fans that listen to this show. Mac Brown returned to UNC. So he was there 98 to 97 and then came back in 2019. So we'll see how things turn out. And of course, Landon is going to be going to UNC this fall. So he's excited about that. So anyway, those are a couple examples. And then even staying in Charlotte, Marty Herney, he was the Panthers GM, left. I actually was working at a radio station that he was at. And then he came back to the Panthers as the GM. So pretty interesting for that to be the case with the Panthers as well. Even my alma mater, Buzz Peterson, he was the coach at App basketball, left, came back, coached App basketball, didn't end well. So hopefully things end a little bit better for Steve Clifford and the Charlotte Hornets. But always fascinating when people come back to where they once were.
Bryce, how about the Mike D'Antoni story? I thought there was like 20 interviews with Mike D'Antoni, and I was so set on him being the coach.
You wanted him.
I was prepared for it. It seemed like that was the only guy we were going to interview.
Yeah, I know his name was definitely thrown around a lot, but I think ultimately they realized he's older. I think he's 70, and Clifford's 60. But I think they knew what they were going to get with D'Antoni, because we've seen this play out. He was with the Knicks and the Lakers and the Rockets and the Suns, of course, who had some success. But it's just kind of this, things always ended the same way. Whereas with the Hornets, Clifford, he maximized the talent on the roster. I think they believed in that. Say, hey, let's bring him back. Let's see him get the most out of LaMelo Ball. And so they went with him. I'm okay with it. Ultimately, I just think it's kind of embarrassing and a little crazy to do that. That was the big thing for me.
Do you think Steve Clifford will be better than James Borrego?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I liked Borrego, so I'm bummed that Borrego's gone. I felt like he was building something. I felt like you got to let it play out a little bit longer. So now the big question is, will Miles Bridges come back to the Hornets, or where will he go? I still think he comes back. I know Detroit was mentioned at one point, but Phoenix, maybe possibility, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, there's some things thrown around there, but I do think Miles Bridges returns to the Hornets. So a lot of NBA stories to keep an eye on. Would love to know your thoughts or questions surrounding the NBA. And then of course, in the next coming weeks, NFL training camps will start beginning. And so this time of year is when I shift my attention to NBA offseason and then fantasy football. And so if you listen to this podcast, I do want to give you a heads up that the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast is returning. And I think we'll even launch one this week. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be having a bunch of fantasy leagues for you to join with Unpacking It as well. So be on the lookout for that. And then also we're relaunching our Fantasy Football Fellowship website, which is going to have even more content this year and give you some options to be a part of Fantasy Football Fellowship, even in your own fantasy leagues. So you can still be a part of it in your own leagues. So keep an eye out for that as well. But it's time to ramp up the fantasy research and doing some mock drafts. So it's a fun time of year. Now, you may ask or wonder, hey, why don't you guys talk more hockey? The Stanley Cup Finals was last night, and congrats to the Colorado Avalanche. I believe they won and held up the Stanley Cup trophy, and I think within 5 minutes they already dented the poor trophy, which was a bummer. But here's the thing: I like the sport of hockey. When I grew up, I played in the street. I played street hockey, never on ice. The idea of skating and playing hockey at the same time seems way too difficult for me. But I like the sport. I enjoy the way that it's played. I love the excitement of hockey. But here's the thing: I can't keep up with it. I can't keep up with the players. I'm just not familiar enough with the players, and like I'm not watching college hockey to get an idea of who they are. So at least with college basketball, like it flows into the NBA, college football. You see some of especially the quarterbacks, a lot of the key players, and then I see them in the NFL. So there's just this disconnect with hockey for me. And then, like, we have the Carolina Hurricanes, but I don't have a Charlotte team. We have a minor league team. So I just never have gotten into it. I've never been to an NHL game, which I know people have told me you got to go, and I'd love to. So if you want to give me some tickets and we'll go to a game, that'd be fun. I'm open to it. So I'm not anti. I love the sport of hockey. I just can't find myself getting into it. And I've even tried to turn it on in recent weeks, and I'll keep an eye on it. And it's fun to see a goal. It's like, oh man, this is sweet. And the crowd's as good as any crowd in sports. It's the best professional sports crowd, I would say. Baseball playoffs get pretty good, but I think NHL hockey, NHL stadiums, arenas, their fans are as diehard as college basketball or college football fans. It's like it's on that level. and that's really cool. But I'm not keeping up with what players are getting traded in the NHL, and let's face it, over the years, ESPN hasn't covered it a lot, and so I'm kind of a byproduct of ESPN. I mean, when I was younger, I probably kept up with it more because ESPN covered it more, and I watched SportsCenter more often when it used to be on all morning long. But you turn on any show. I mean, PTI barely talks about it, and some of the other shows. Sports radio rarely talks about the NHL. So it's just not a mainstream sport, which is really interesting because I don't think anybody would say, oh, I hate that sport or that's not a great sport. No, it's an awesome sport. But for some reason, it just doesn't get it's not talkable. It's not one of those sports that's talkable. And, some people don't even like the NBA, like watching the NBA, but they really get into the off season because it's fascinating. It's a soap opera. Nobody likes Kyrie, right? But we're all fascinated where he's going to go. To care that much about a guy we don't even root for is a funny thing, but that's just how it goes. So that's my take on hockey today. But anyway, let me share the Medi-Share moment of the week. And speaking of fans, Atlanta Braves fans, they're still loving life after winning the World Series. But last night, they welcomed home their former love, their former guy, the one that helped bring a World Series to Atlanta last year, and now he's playing for the LA Dodgers, Freddie Freeman. And the Medi-Share moment of the week was when he received his World Series ring right before the game. So it was his first game back in Atlanta. The crowd cheered for him. They went nuts. It was actually a pretty emotional setting. And it makes sense because I think people understood that they couldn't commit to him to give him the big contract. LA is always willing to pay everybody, and he got a good deal. He loved Atlanta. They loved him. And in sports, we as fans, we have to accept this sometimes, that our favorite players end up leaving. Trust me, I am all in favor of guys starting and ending their career with one franchise, especially when it's the franchise that I root for. To see Cam Newton in a Patriots jersey is bizarre. I want to see Christian McCaffrey finish with the Panthers and LaMelo Ball. Oh, please don't leave. Please don't leave the Hornets. To watch Larry Johnson, one of my favorite players growing up, in a Knicks jersey. Ugh. Sorry, Henry. But yeah, so Freddie Freeman in a Dodgers jersey, it seems weird, but to see him there, the appreciation, the emotion, the excitement, hey, we always will have this moment. We will forever be linked as World Series champions together, regardless of who he plays for this year or for any other team that he plays for. And that's the crazy thing in sports too, is that the team that wins, that very rarely does everybody come back. A couple of years ago, that's why I made such a big deal about the Bucks when they brought back everybody. That was a fascinating story to me because it rarely happens. For one, you bring back the stars. Like, usually you can maybe keep the core, but oftentimes there's a guy on a contract, about to become a free agent, so he's going to leave. So that's usually the case. And so even if the Warriors are able to keep some of their players, it'd be remarkable. Even the guys like Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole and those types of guys. But it's just so with the Braves, you always have that moment with Freddie Freeman, even though people go their different direction. And fans will always have those memories, always have that love for Freddie Freeman. So very cool moment. That is your Medi-Share moment of the week. Check out medishare.com/unpacking it. And if you didn't check it out earlier, you can go see my beautiful family on that website. We're kind of the face of the website now. So medishare.com/unpacking it, and encourage you to check that out. All right. So now we're going to do tap drill. We'll wrap up the show. We'll bring back Henry. We're going to hear from Landon. He'll chime in a little bit as well. But Henry, why don't you, we got about 5 questions today. So we're loaded for tap drill. Here we go. All right. I can't hear you. You must be muted. I got you. You're good. Go for it. No. All right. We'll try again.
Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. Now we got it working. All right. Shout out to the guys there with the questions, following up with the questions that I got up with. The first thing I actually talked about was Benedict Mathurin of the Pacers, he was the first-round pick at number 6, had this to say about going up against LeBron James next season. A lot of people say he's great. I want to see how great he is. I don't think anyone is better than me. He's going to have to show me that he's great. So, guys, do we like the fact that he just got traded, he just got drafted, and he's going after arguably the greatest basketball player ever before even putting on a uniform?
It's over. He's done. He is done. I mean, this was such a bad decision. Listen, last week there was a story that came out with Chase Claypool talking about, he sees himself as a top 3 receiver in the NFL. People laughed about it. And, the memes were going around. What do you mean top 3 in Pittsburgh? Now, I actually appreciate Chase Claypool's mentality. He views himself as a top receiver. Well, great. Good for him. Go be a top receiver. And so he's not downplaying anybody else. He's not mentioning anybody else. He's just talking about being confident in the type of wide receiver he is. So I embrace that type of confidence. This type of confidence, ripping on LeBron James, who's been the best player for 20 years. Are you kidding me? Don't do it. It's silly. It's unnecessary. You haven't done anything. You were okay at Arizona, but you weren't great. And now you're going to Indiana, a team that's not very good. You're going to be irrelevant for the next 4 or 5 years anyway. And even then, we'll see if you can emerge. So to me, this is crossing the line. And so I'm gonna say no. I don't like the misguided confidence here.
I love the confidence, but when your confidence borderlines on delusion, now we got a problem. I love the fact that you want to go up against LeBron, because if you watch the draft, sometimes you'll hear one of the questions they'll ask a lot of the draftees. Hey, who is it that you want to see? Who is it that you're waiting to go up against? Now, if he says, I can't wait to test my skills against LeBron, that's cool. There's no problem with that. When you get on the court with guys that you've idolized for years, and now you're on the court with them, you want to see how you stack up with them. That's no problem. But when you literally call out one of the greatest basketball players of all time and say that he's gonna have to show me, dude, you just got there. We haven't even seen you play in the summer league. We haven't even played summer league basketball yet. How do we know that you're not even the best rookie?
It's just so outrageous. It's outrageous.
And who's to say that you're even going to get on the court your first year?
This is
that I don't understand it. Shannon goes on and says this isn't the WWE. It's not the WWF anymore. But you're not cutting a heel promo.
No.
Okay, this is not the WWE. Okay.
That's right.
You gotta earn your time before you can start calling out the best players in the world.
Absolutely.
All right. Here's another one. Buried in all of this, we had Rob Gronkowski retiring again. The first time he retired because he said that he was just in so much pain, he couldn't move, he couldn't get up in the morning, and we understood that. Rob Gronkowski is a big dude who was a very, very, very good tight end, probably one of the best tight ends in history. So he's taken a lot of hits over the years, and we understood the fact that he didn't want to play anymore. That's understandable. Then Tom Brady goes over to Tampa Bay, and then I don't know if you've ever seen the little video of Tom calling Gronk and Gronk running, and he's like, "I'm here. I'm reporting for duty." So now he retires again, and there's video of him of youngsters, probably 7 or 8 year olds, teaching him how to do the gritty in his first day of retirement. I don't know how that went, but do you think that if Tom Brady calls him to say, "Hey, Gronk, these guys don't know what they're doing. I need you to catch the football," you think he's going to come out of retirement again, or is he not even going to pick up Tom Brady's call?
All right. So the narrative that I've been listening to is Gronk just doesn't want to go to training camp. Gronk just wants to, he wants to get paid more. Maybe he'll come back midway through the season. That may all be true. That might happen. But here's my hot take, so to speak. I don't think the Bucs are going to be as good as they have been. I think they're going to take a step back, and I don't think they're going to be as close to a Super Bowl as they've been in years past. And so when it gets to that point where Rob maybe would consider it, I think he's going to go, I don't buy it. I think there's too many good teams in the NFC. I don't think the Bucs can do it. It's not worth it for me. I'm not coming back. So I think he's done. I think the Bucs are done. I don't think they're going to win again. And here's what always happens. Once you flirt with retirement, I think it's over. And, Brett Favre came back from retirement, and he did okay, but it was not great, right? He had the one good season. He was okay in Minnesota. But then when he flirted again, he came back and he went to the Jets. It was really bad. I'm afraid that this could happen with Tom Brady, where I knew he was going to come back. I knew he wasn't going to retire. But I just don't think he's going to carry the momentum this year. And so I just don't think the Bucs are going to be as good. And I don't think Gronk's going to come back. So I think he's retired. Goodbye, Gronk. He's the man. I like Gronk. I think he was great for the NFL. He's not necessarily a great analyst, but hopefully he can still be a part of the game, be a part of even TV in some way. They just have to find a unique role for him. I was listening to maybe it was Dan Patrick or somebody talking about Tony Saragusa, who sadly passed away this past week, but he had a unique role in broadcasting as that third guy. And I don't know if Gronk could be on a game, but there's some unique way to incorporate him into sports, because who doesn't like Gronk, right? You got to, as far as a broadcast goes. So anyway, that would be my take on that.
Yeah, Gronk is kind of like that spice that you have in the spice rack, and you just throw it on the food. Just makes it seem a lot better. Football is always good when you got characters like Gronk, when you got characters like Beast Mode. You don't necessarily want them on your Fox Sports, but you definitely want them involved. So
that's right.
Gronk is always is good to have. So now going back to the NBA draft, 2 new Oklahoma City rookies with the same name took pictures that imitated the popular Spider-Man theme, when you have the 2 Spider-Mans saying he's the imposter and he's the imposter. So now what do you think of Jalen, L-I-N, and Jalen, L-E-N, Williams being on the same team? Coach is going to have a hard time, don't you think?
This is the silliest thing. And I actually think teams should avoid this. It's hard enough. Like just the Celtics, for instance, we were just watching in the finals. You had Grant Williams and Robert Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhat confusing. Like even for fans, it's like, wait, what Williams are we talking about? And so to have a guy with both named Jalen, I mean, are you kidding me? Jalen Williams. This is this is a problem. Like someone's gonna have to be a nickname. Someone's gonna have to drop their name, because otherwise it's just not gonna work. Like even for the people that cover the team, the reporters, the radio announcers, what are you gonna say? Jalen with an I, Jalen with a Y, or Jalen with an E? It's just silly. So Landon, where do you come out on this?
Yeah, I was watching the second round of the draft, and I saw Jalen Williams get picked. And I'm like, didn't he just get picked in the first round?
Yeah.
And I look back at it, the Thunder, both Jalen Williamses. And I'm like, wow, this is not going to work. There's no way.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to add up for me. So I think it's a mistake. I think you have to avoid it. You can't let this happen on the same team. It's bad enough in the same league to have the same name, which we've seen a couple times. But on the same team, no way. All right, next question.
All right, Michael Jordan, when he drafted a player, as a matter of fact, he was on the phone as talking about Williams. Another Williams, Mark Williams, was on the phone with them. And after selecting him, he said, even though you're a Dookie, I take pride that we drafted you. So now, do you think going into whether it be an NFL draft, an MLB draft, do you think GMs take into account, well, I'm from North Carolina, I can't draft a Dookie. I can't draft a guy from Duke. Now, do you think their fandom gets in the way of making the personnel decisions?
So a few years ago, the Hornets passed on Justice Winslow from Duke and drafted Frank Kaminsky, and I thought it was the most outrageous selection. Justice Winslow hasn't really panned out, but I didn't like that move. So I guess I questioned it, because for a while there, I mean, think about it. The Hornets or the Bobcats, they drafted Raymond Felton and Sean May, and Tyler Hansbrough was on the team at one point, but they also drafted Gerald Henderson. And so in
I
some
remember those
ways,
guys. Yeah.
the bigger question for the Hornets is, hey, maybe you guys should watch some other teams and go beyond just watching the NCAA tournament and ACC basketball. It might help you a little bit, but they draft Kemba because Kemba was unbelievable in the tournament. But anyway, as far as I do think it factors in where there is a bias if you're a GM or you're more familiar because you have connections with schools that you went to. So you're gonna tap into those schools, and then when it comes to the rivals, you're not as connected with those guys because that's your rival, and so I do think there's a filter there. But then when you get across a player that's such a perfect fit, like Mark Williams was custom fit for the Charlotte Hornets and what they need, and so you can't. Oh, he wears a Duke jersey. Well, it doesn't matter anymore. He's no longer at Duke. Now he's coming in the NBA. You absolutely embrace it. You have a little fun. You joke around. No big deal. So I do think there's some level of factor, but then you say, all right, we got to go for it. Absolutely. Landon?
To me, if you draft a guy either from Duke, Gonzaga, or Villanova, you have to draft them. If they're in the draft, you have to draft them. They're smart players. They're good players. And they always somewhat pan out. Somewhat.
I don't know about your Gonzaga theory because we drafted Adam Morrison and not so much.
That is true.
Not so much on him, but yeah. So I can't go there.
Hey guys, you have to tell your guys, hey guys, do you think we could watch some other teams besides these guys? I mean, there are 62 draft picks, I mean, there are more teams. Well, we'll see how it plays out. And our last tap drill, and I'm going to call an audible on this one. I'm surprised that we haven't talked much baseball, but again, I guess it's a mid-Atlantic bias. Aaron Judge is on a pace to hit 60 home runs this season. He actually has a chance not to just carry the New York Yankees into the postseason. He literally has a chance to bring back baseball because, again, just as you said, Bryce, you don't hear a lot of baseball talk other than the home runs and the strikeouts. And for whatever you feel about the home run record, Aaron Judge actually has a chance to put baseball back on the map. So, guys, what do you think of Aaron Judge's home run endeavor?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, we love the home run, but we've already seen it. Like we've already seen the big time home run records and the home run chase. And I mean, trust me, the summer of Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, I was all in. Actually, my mom sent me a picture. She's going through a scrapbook of me wearing my Mark McGwire shirt. It was a shirt, not a jersey. And so I was all in on that. But I'm not sure that still moves the needle as much as it once did. And maybe, there are plenty of Yankees fans across the country, but for the non-Yankees fans, are we rooting for Aaron Judge? I mean, he's likable. He's fine. It's not that I don't like him, but is he must watch to where I'm tuning in every time he's at the plate? I mean, that was the case with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. That was really fun. So can he get to that level? Because what's at this point, are we as enamored by the records? I'm not so sure. I just don't think that's the same level as it once was. So we'll see. To your point, this time of year, you put this in the format. What else are we watching? It's the summer, so it's baseball. It's baseball time. So baseball gets a little more love. We'll be tuning in a little bit more. But I'm trying to go to a game here soon. We have some local minor league baseball teams, so hopefully I'll make my way over there this summer. But we need a ton of stars. Now Bryce Harper's injured. We need a ton of stars in baseball. That's always what it comes down to, and they have to continue to make the tweaks to the game. So it's kind of the same conversation. We got to have shorter games. We got to have more stars, and that would draw us in. And until we get there, I'm not seeing the buzz. I'm not having, guys aren't texting me, hey, did you see Aaron Judge? So when that happens, then we can talk more about it on the show and that sort of thing. But I know that you're in the Northeast New York area. So people are passionate about their Yankees. There's no question about that. So I hear you on that.
Now, if you definitely need to get out to a minor league game. Sometimes actually the minor league games are more fun than going to a Yankee Stadium or going to a City Field or going to a Dodger Stadium because it's more fan friendly. And let's face it, it's less expensive.
Yeah, true. I know. I was looking last night. I think I saw the lowest was like $16. So get it down to 10. Get it down to 10 and we're talking. I gotta have a little room for nachos. Come on.
Absolutely.
Gotta
You
have some room for nachos.
can't go anywhere without nachos, man.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, Henry, appreciate you. Good job. Thanks to Henry and Landon and CJ and Chris. And thanks to all of you for listening. And thanks for those of you jumping on the chat, especially Shannon, one of our loyal listeners and great supporters of Unpacking It. Appreciate you and all your comments today. And thanks to everybody else that supports this show. All of our listeners. We have so many wonderful donors that give financially to Unpacking It because they love the show. They love the devotional. They love what we're doing here at Unpacking It. And so it's our passion to challenge, encourage, and inspire sports fans to follow Jesus and become more like him. And so we can't do it without you. And so we're thrilled to be able to link arms with you. If you'd like to support our show and support our ministry, you can do so. We're a nonprofit ministry. So you can go to unpackingit.com/donate, unpackingit.com/donate. But we'll be back in a few weeks. We're going to take some time off to refuel. We're still going to have other podcasts coming out. So we're just not going to do the live show, but we will have some other podcasts for you to listen to. And hopefully you've caught up on some of the previous guest interviews that we've done the last couple of months. A lot of wonderful guests have been on the show. And so maybe this summer, as things slow down and not as many sporting events to watch, you can catch up on some of those as well. And then we'll also have the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast coming out soon as well. So for everybody here, I'm Bryce. I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well. And I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. And as we talked about today, let's not be floaters. Let's not just go through the motions, but let's truly love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Let's be passionate about him, passionate to obey him. He saved us. He loves us. He invites us in to know him. And so let's not just float and drift through life. Let's live with intentionality, intentionally seeking him, loving him, following him, and enjoying him for who he is and what he's done. And just his willingness to allow us to experience his glory, experience his presence, and experience his love for us, which is amazing. So let's rest in that today. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Unpacking It podcast presented by Medi-Share.